Hey, this is Duff, and you're listening to Hannah and Dane on Flavor HD.
Dane, Neal, Hannah, Stanley, Flavor HD on great affiliates all around the country, along with the ace of cakes himself, the Sultan of Sweets at the Gartner Studios booth, Duff Goldman. Duff, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Obviously, we all know that you are well known for doing really crazy cakes, just stuff that people can't normally do at home. But now we've got you going into the retail market with both the fun and the different colors. And I'm looking at the coolest airbrush machine I've seen. It's so tiny, and I'm so excited to get to use this.
It's really, really awesome. Okay, this is what's called a double action airbrush. So what happens is you pour the color in here. As you pull this back, more color will come out. It's a lot easier for a first timer to use because when you pull it back just a little tiny bit, when you first start using an airbrush, you hesitate a lot. So with this really gives you the confidence to like really use an airbrush well. This is a really cool airbrush machine. The whole thing retails for $129, where usually when you have a compressor plus a gun, you can talk $300, $400, $500, $600 sometimes. Like we have some in the bakery that like from way back in the day that we have that are like really expensive that you get like an art store. These ones work just as well, and these retail for super cheap.
I'm sure you get a lot of fan mail, a lot of curiosity. We want to make this cake, we want to make that one. Did you get a lot of stuff saying, we'd like to do this, but we just don't have the tools? Was there a calling for these kind of items?
There was, but there were a lot of people calling and asking about like different products and stuff, but really this comes from my own experience of when I opened a bakery. When I opened my place, I couldn't get anything that was like really that good. I mean, there were some companies out there that made some stuff that was okay, and that's what was on the market, that was what was available for retail, so that's what we had to work with. Nobody was making an airbrush that was for cakes. To do one that's specifically for cakes, even though it's not, I mean, you really could. If I was
for the listeners, it looks like the kind of airbrush that I had a long time ago, but obviously, it's made for the cake application.
It's marketed for cakes, but I mean, if I was in art school, I'd totally buy one because I'd be like, dude, this is so much cheaper than that other one. But really, it's when I started my bakery, like I couldn't get anything good. I didn't have a tax ID number, so I couldn't get like anything sent to me, on a truck. So I had to go out and just buy everything retail. And so the stuff that was available retail, it just wasn't that good. And so it's like I had to learn how to work with it and just really just kind of make do and sort of come up with things like I couldn't find any like taping knives, for example, for icing cakes. They don't sell those, but they do at Home Depot. So I'd go to Home Depot and I'd buy like a taping knife, and that would ice a cake. And now we have our own.
I mean, but that's very cool that you've been able to improvise, and that's really what you guys do. And Jeff, like using PVC, maybe you'll have your own line of PVCs for people to do too. But to kind of try to make something that would work for the application, but may not be something mainstream in a baking situation.
Yeah, totally. And and also it's stuff that like we've used now that we can get our hands on anything. It's stuff that we know like this is the industry standard, and we see the faults in it, and so now it's like really nice working with Gartner. I can be like, hey, okay, this is like the industry standard for like a cake wheel, for example, like this guy here, and I can be like, okay, this is like what's out there, but this is there's this problem, and this problem, and they're like, okay, let's figure out how to fix that. And so I was actually able to draw pictures of what my ideal cake wheel would look like, and then they made it.
And it's beautiful. You could use it for display, so it's multi-purpose in your home application, but it's still so level. And what's the price point on this? $39.99, and so we've got the ability to use this as a cake stand, but it also opens it up for people to be able to do more techniques than they've been able to in the past because they're not trying to crank around that counter.
Definitely. You're like, when you have a cake in a stationer, it's just kind of sitting there. Like when you're piping, a lot of times what you do is you get into a rhythm, and so you want to start like basically your hand is making the same motion over and over and over again. Now what you want to be able to do is this, right? You want to be able to turn a wheel as you're making the motion without moving yourself or the cake, right? When it's just sitting on the counter, you can't do this, so you have to do this. And then when you're doing this, all your I know this is radio, and I'm like doing, I'm gesticulating. Okay, cool. Yeah. So when you're piping and the cake is stationary, your piping isn't going to be nice and even. Where here, you put on a good album and you listen to it. You got a beat going, and then you just sort of go for it. And that's what this does. But the really cool thing about this, the best cake wheels, when you if you have a cake on here, and then you have to move it somewhere else, right? Well, when you pick it up from the wheel, this thing falls off, right?
Yeah.
This one does, and those are the best ones on the market right now. The wheel and the base, they separate. So when you pick this up, boom, you get this giant chunk of metal that falls on the ground, and you're like, whoa, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna drop my cake, So this one, it doesn't do that. So it's attached, and it has these bearings down here, and the bearings were left open on purpose because the reason why the wheel and the base would detach before is so you could clean it. The reason why we left this open is so you could keep it clean, because that's where bacteria builds up.
And we don't like that.
Nobody likes bacteria, so you have to keep it open so you can get in there and wash it, get soap in there, and and this way it's going to keep working all the time. It's easily, you can keep this thing really lubed up really well. So like you take some pan spray and spray it in there, and then it goes, and you're good.
And then you also, in addition to the airbrush machine, which is so tiny and compact and really packs a big punch for the size, you can get the Duff branded colorings that go with it, and those are pretty affordable as well.
We have the food coloring is really, really, it's awesome. All these colors are very true. Like one of my biggest complaints was when I was buying stuff retail is that I would buy, say, a blue, and then I would use it and be like a really purple blue, or I'd buy a green and it would be like a forest green or a really yellow green. It wasn't the green I was looking for. These colors here, like we picked out PMS colors, gave them to whoever makes the actual color. They would send us samples, we'd try them out and be like, nope, it's not right. They'd send it back. I mean, this was probably a 4-month process of going back and forth, until finally, like, our black is a true black.
That's big.
And I'm pretty sure, I know I'm biased because my name's on it, but like I'm pretty sure that our black is the only true black on the market. When you're using a black food coloring and you're airbrushing or you're painting with it, it's either skewed to the green or it's skewed to the purple. You know what I mean? And so you'll end up like if you dye fondant with it, it turns green or purple. With this black, when you mix it, it's either gray, when you put enough in there, it turns black, and it's awesome.
That's nice to know. And so for people going into new areas with the airbrush, it's one thing, but there's an array from Gartner Studios of products that are pretty traditional, but still carry the quality in the Duff name. You've got the fondant, the icings, things you'd expect from a bake.
One of my employees' dads makes us send him buckets of the chocolate frosting, and he eats it with a spoon.
In moderation, that's great, right?
Yeah, but I don't think he's doing it in moderation. For the rate that we send it to him.
They're 50-gallon things.
I know, they're little, but I was just like, come on, man. Like, it's not pudding. But it works really well. The other cool thing about these are actually gum paste flour kits. So we have a couple different kits. We have pre-made flowers, and then you also have butterflies as well. Now, this is all gum paste. It's all edible stuff, except for like the wires that hold them together. This was another thing that when I first started out, you couldn't get these. Like professionals could get these, but the companies that sold these only sold them to professionals. They wouldn't send them to like Duff at his apartment in Baltimore. Like they'd be like, we're not sending you that stuff. So I had to make all these things. And to be honest, I'm not very good at making flowers. I can make roses really well. I can make a couple of like little random flowers, but like making flowers like these, like I'm okay at. It's just not my strong point. And so I was like, man, we need to have flowers that are made, because when you have a flower like this, and there's 4 come in a packet, it's $6.99. Now, if I paid someone to sit down and make these flowers, that would probably be 2 hours worth of work. And when you think about what I would pay somebody to sit there for 2 hours to make these flowers, as opposed to being able to buy them, just makes so much more sense business-wise. And they're awesome flowers. They're just as good as 15 years ago, the flowers that you could buy were not as good as the ones you could make. The technology has come along where people are so much better at it now.
And this has really made it accessible for the mom, really, to own and have this as maybe even a craft project for the kids to get into decorating an artistic expression, etc. And this, at the price points that it's at, what, $6.95, I think you just said, this allows them to not be panic-stricken that the kids might be wasting.
Totally. They're not going to be wasting, and also the learning curve is so short. I could buy a pack of flowers, buy an airbrush, buy some food coloring, make a cake, put these flowers on. I know my very first cake is going to look awesome. But the cool part is, after doing this 30 times, I'm still learning stuff. I'm still learning nuances. Like, I could buy the pack of butterflies, and you can airbrush this. Like, this butterfly on the package probably took 3 minutes to decorate.
Unbelievable.
Right? I could spend an hour decorating that thing, sitting there with a little paintbrush, and we also sell paintbrushes now. So like we went through the bakery, and I picked all the paintbrushes that all my decorators, I picked all their favorite brushes, took pictures of them, sent them to Gartner, and said, these are the brushes that we use, this is what we want. So now we have a pack of paintbrushes, and so you could sit there literally for hours and do all the little details that would be on this butterfly, or paint all like little tiny details, little imperfections that you could put on a flower. And so even though it's easy for someone to pick up and make your very first one, it will get better and better and better and better. You can keep learning the whole time.
Well, Duff, when you got into it, part of the reason that Charm City was so successful is you guys were doing things nobody was doing. But now, based on the success, people seeing what's going on out there, do they send you, pictures of cakes they made based on inspiration, and you're like, holy crap, I would have never been able to make that like when I first started?
I steal so many ideas from Twitter and Facebook. Like, people send me pictures like, hey, what do you think of this cake I made for my kid? I'm like, hey, how'd you make the silverware next to that steak? And they're like, oh, I used my gum paste and I stuck this thing. I'm like, cool, thanks for telling me. Hey, Jeff, I found out how to do this. Like when we started out, when you saw like me and Jeff were on the Food Network challenges, like we were never winning. Right, there was nobody expected us to win. We didn't expect to win. We weren't there to win. We were there to have a good time. But really, when we were there, we were taking notes. We were taking pictures and like looking at like these are real cake decorators. We were like, okay, we got to watch how these guys do it. Like we stole all their ideas. We're just like, wait. And the cool thing about those competitions were that people are very given. If I ask somebody like, hey, how did you make that little figure? And they're like, come here, I'll show you. And they would spend like a half hour explaining like how to build like this one random little thing. And it's just like all those people taught me so much stuff, and I feel like it's just my turn to sort of like, hey, this is what we've learned.
It's awesome that you're giving back now, that you're helping share some of the secrets and all that kind of stuff. And with Gartner Studios, now people are able to get a lot of those items. But let's talk really quickly about people identify you so much with Baltimore, but now you got Charm City Cakes West. How that's going, it's got to be an exciting time.
So we just opened a new bakery in Los Angeles called Charm City Cakes West, and LA's awesome, man. It's really awesome. Like, I love Baltimore. I love Baltimore. Baltimore's my town, but man, like, being able to ride a motorcycle 365 days a year is kind of nice. Like, going swimming on New Year's Day is kind of awesome. Like, I really...
What's just the events? There's just so many more things going on. I mean, you're making cakes for, I don't know...
Staples Center.
Or the Doobie Brothers or something. Who knows?
I saw the Doobie Brothers at the Hollywood Bowl. It was so good. It was so good. Yeah, if anybody out there, if you ever get a chance to see the Doobie Brothers do it, I'm telling you, man, it is so cool. It's a great show.
What do you think of Chicago? You're back here, and I know that you did a cake for Lollapalooza last year. Are you going to be doing that this year as well?
I don't know. It's a good question. Should get PR on that.
Welcome to Chicago. What are you looking forward to seeing most while you're here?
Michael Symons. He's going to be on that stage. I'm going to go talk to him. I'm trying to rent his apartment in L.A. He's got this really cool apartment. He's never there. Yeah, he's either Cleveland or New York. And I'm like, dude, just rent me your apartment, because he like totally redid the kitchen. I've been inside of it. It's amazing, and it's like, oh man, it's awesome. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to like yell at him and see if he'll rent me his place.
Well, good luck with that. Duff Goldman here in Chicago, trying to get Michael Symons' apartment, very important, but also showcasing the great things from Gartner Studios. Duff, can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is great. Hey, this is Duff, and you're listening to Hannah and Dane on Flavor HD.